how can we live out and model the gospel's impact on our life for our kids who don't quite get it yet and can't quite comprehend it? We're going to talk about that. And then I have a great interview with Trista Dunsmoor today on Mission and Likeness. Hey everyone, welcome to Mission and Likeness. My name's Scott. Thankful that you are joining us here on the program today. We have a great show lined up. Like I said, Trista Dunsmoor is going to be joining me later on in the show, and so definitely hope that you stick around for that. Man, it is crazy, and I get. I'm like the typical person who's saying, "Oh, I can't believe how fast time's going," but I mean, it's June. It's going to be June already, or it is June already. I mean, it is just crazy how quickly time is going. And part of that realization is how quickly my boys are growing up. 8 and 6, we have a third and a first grader now. And, I was teaching one of our Bible study workshops recently, and one of the ladies that was in attendance came up to me and she said, "I remember when your oldest was like wee little and in the infant nursery," because we started attending our church whenever we were expecting our second son, and our boys are only 19 months apart, and so he would have been a year and a half old roughly at that point. And she said, how old is he now? And I said, he's 8 and he's going to be going into third grade next year. And it's hitting me that these moments are fleeting. These years are fleeting. They're just so quickly moving that it's put a renewed sense of purpose on my life, a renewed sense of mission for my life. And I think that, in the midst of all of the things that are going on in our world, and especially the things that affect our kids, we as parents, our primary instinct is to protect our children. We don't want them to be subject to things that are going to be harmful to them, things that will have a negative influence on them. And so we try to not isolate in a negative way, but we want to try to put up some walls around them so that we can, allow positive influences on their lives and kind of keep all of the negative stuff away from them. And obviously in the midst of that, our goal, our hope, our desire for our kids in the Christian context is that they come to know Jesus as their Savior. And how do we do that? We try to put positive things in their lives, truthful things in their lives. We try to live out the gospel as best we can. And the struggle that I've seen is our boys, 8 and 6, they know the gospel. If you ask them, what is the gospel? They'll say, the gospel is Jesus died for our sins so that we can get to heaven, so that we can live eternally with God. They know that. They can articulate that. But that doesn't mean they're saved just because they can say it. That heart transformation hasn't taken place yet. And my prayer and my wife's prayer is that does happen. The difficulty is knowing that I have a responsibility as a father to bring up my kids to know and to fear the Lord, while at the same time, I have no control over whether or not they come to faith. And that puts you in a pretty tough position. So how do I, even though I can't control it, I can influence. I can put positive influence in their life. I can surround them with the truth. And so how do we do that? How do we live that out? How do we take current events that are happening, mold and help to mold things into a gospel experience for them? I think where we need to focus is we have a lot of big expectations for our kids. We want them to do well academically. We want them to do well socially, whatever that looks like anymore. We want them to do well in everything that they do. And so we include, we want them to be a good, faithful Christian, as they grow older. And I think we have all these big aspirations, and that can sometimes cause us to overreact and feel like, okay, well, that means they have to do perfect and they have to do really well on everything they do so they don't backslide. Or it can throw us into oh, well, we have a lot of time. I mean, they're only in first and third grade, so we don't have to rush anything just yet. There's going to be time. And I think that there's a healthy balance in between both of those. So I think what we need to do, and again, this is all, I'm doing this, as it comes to me. This isn't something that I've tried or anything. I don't have, this is all new to me as well. But as I think about my own faith journey, I think that it's important for us to understand that we need to think big. We serve a big God. The idea of a big God theology, where if we have an idea of what we think God is, he's bigger. If we have an idea of how good we think God is, he's better. If we think God is this glorious, he's even more glorious. We cannot in our finite minds actually wrap our head around the true nature of God. In that workshop that I was talking about, the verse or chapter rather that we were looking at was 1 John 4. And the idea of 1 John 4, especially in the latter half, is the idea that God is love. God is spirit, as John says in 1 John 1. And so we have a God who is spirit, who is omnipresent, who is omnipotent. I mean, he is more than what we can actually wrap our heads around. So how do we get that idea of who God is, and how do we focus that to our kids and try to get them to understand that's who God is, and here's what he's done. He has sent his son Jesus to be the propitiation, to be the substitute for our sins, so that we can know God. How do we articulate that? They know it. And so I think this is where the influence needs to come in. Our children need to see how this actually works out in our lives. One of the things that I've noticed, especially with my older son, is the things that I will pray for, he will pray for. The way and the style in which I pray, he will mimic. And so where I think it's adorable and I love it. But the other thing is, I don't want him to become me. I don't want his level of Christianity to be Scott's level of Christianity. Because I'm a mess. I fail. I fall short every single day. There is so much in my life that I still need to work on. And it's going to take the rest of my life to even begin working on it. So my goal is not for my boys to become a Christian like me. My goal for my boys is to be a follower of Jesus. So how do we model that? As they're growing and as they're getting older and knowing that there comes a point where hanging out with dad and doing, the things that we do and, the activities that we have right now isn't going to be their top priority. And so knowing that there is a timetable on this, I'm trying to make, this summer an opportunity to really dig in and invest and begin showing them, modeling to them what my faith means to me. Because if I can't model it to my own kids, if I'm not willing to model it in my own home, in how I talk to them, in how I react, and how I treat my wife, and how I treat people who are coming into our home that may or may not be followers of Jesus, if I'm not explaining to them why we have people in our home that aren't followers of Jesus, I'm not going to do that externally. And I would actually contend it's harder to do it in your home because you're always under scrutiny from your children. Sometimes my wife, just kidding. But my kids are always, they hear everything. You know, especially whenever I don't think they hear something, they heard it. I could ask them to clean their room and scream it at them. Oh, I didn't hear you. I could whisper something and they hear it. You know, so that's just one of the realities of having kids. But one of the things that my kids love is they love stories. They love hearing stories. And so we are, you know, on a quest to try to find stories that have a little bit of a deeper meaning than just surface level stuff. And so we've been doing some research, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you've found a series or an author or, you know, some books that are great. I know friends of ours, I can't think of the name of the series, but they bought my son for his birthday the first couple of books of a series that you know we want to dig into this summer. I wish I could remember the name. I should have wrote it down. I knew I was going to mention it, but anyways, my mind just tends to go and flutter. But we want to find books that teach solid doctrine, you know, and whether or not it's shaped as this is a doctrine, I want it to be in what they're hearing. You know, and I think of like the Chronicles of Narnia, you know, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. My kids love that movie. I love that movie, and I love those books. That's probably a little advanced for them from the reading side of things. C.S. Lewis, wonderful writer, beautiful communicator, but that might be a little bit too much for them at this point. But so if you know of any books, I would love to hear of them. You can comment or reach out to us and let me know what that is. But I think the other thing that we need to do is, I mean, and I get that there's limits and there's lines. I mean, you don't want your kids to be, you know, especially as young as mine are, to really be in all of the different things that are going on within the family. But I think it's healthy to bring them in on some of the things that you're working through. You know, one of the things that I've struggled with, you know, specifically just in this last year has been, you know, some anxiety, and it's been really detrimental to health and you know, being able to function, you know, at times. And that's something that I've begun to share with them and trying to get them to understand that we have issues. This idea that Christianity is a bunch of people who have had all of their issues solved by Jesus, and I get it that we've had our sin resolved, but in the day-to-day of life, we can still succumb to that sin. We can still give in. We can still neglect the Holy Spirit and give in to the sin that is in our lives. We still have those struggles. They don't just go away. And so I think it's important that we model that. We have to find things that our kids enjoy, and we have to enjoy them with them so that we can have a little bit of an influence in them, so that it's something that they can say, you know, this meant something to my dad, and this meant something to my mom, and this meant something to my friend's parents and to, you know, other people in our church. And we just want that to saturate them. We just want that to fill everything that they do. And I'm not saying that we need to, you know, bubble them in you know, that kind of a context. They need to experience, you know, adverse things as well. And so that's what I'm not saying just don't let them do anything. But what I am saying is we need to learn about how our kids process and what our kids are, how they think and how they interpret life. And then we need to be able to learn how to speak truth into that for them. And knowing, you know, how my kids are wired, at least, they're wired a little bit like me and a little bit like my wife and a little bit like we don't know yet. But a lot of that is modeling and having some conversations and revealing some of the things that are going on with us And I'll tell you, it's been surprising how much I'm learning about my own faith and what I believe and how I process and how I communicate with God just by verbalizing it to them. We'll be right back. Our mission here at loveLocal is to help shape a culture through entertaining and engaging content that unites followers of Jesus together and helps us to live out the gospel each and every day. We would love for you to join us on that mission. If you enjoy the content here on loveLocal, consider becoming a member. You can become a local. It's a monthly or yearly subscription to get access to content early and all of our new content exclusively for locals. Coming up, we have Trista Dunsmoor, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Mission and Likeness. Really appreciate you being here on the show today. And as I had talked about earlier, we have a great guest joining us. Her name is Trista Dunsmoor. She's a senior leader with Norwex, and she's joining us via video feed from South Dakota. So Trista, thanks for joining us here today.
Well, thanks for having me on, Scott. It's kind of nerve-wracking being on this side of the microphone, I'll tell you that.
It's definitely a different thing, and it takes some getting used to, but I'm sure you're going to catch on.
I hope so.
Yeah, so Trista is, this is a unique connection, because typically, all of the connections come from, people that I'm networking with on my side of things. And I was in a conversation with my wife, and she said, who would be a great conversation? And I said, who? And she says, Trista Dunsmoor. And I'm like, all right, let's get her on the show. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk a little bit. And so here's where I want to start. One of the things that we try to really hone in on here on Mission and Likeness is why it's important for us to know our mission, and in the same regard, how do we live that mission out in the likeness of Jesus? And so talk a little bit about just your story and what you feel your mission in life is at this point in the journey.
All right. Well, I have been in direct sales with Norwex for almost 10 years. And when I started, for me, it was just really a way for me to hopefully quit my job and be home with my kids. And I was working full time and felt super fulfilled. And so I was like, well, maybe this would be a good option for me. But what I didn't realize in this journey of 10 years is just the amount of personal growth. And I think that would happen no matter what. Like, I was in my late 20s. Now I'm in my late 30s. I think there's a lot of personal growth that happens in your late 30s. But just especially over the last couple of years, I've done a lot more reflecting, personal development. And I've really kind of come to find, for me personally, my mission is to be the person that God created me to be, and also to inspire others to figure out who God created them to be and to own that. And it's a very interesting kind of thing to live that out, because it is a journey and it can be really difficult sometimes to figure out, like, why am I feeling this way? And like, I feel like I'm not normal, or I'm the only one that feels like this, and I hate this about myself. And then to step back and say, no, this is a gift that God gave me, and I'm going to own it and use it, and also help others discover that. And so for me, it's really just figuring out, like, how can I best use my gifts to make the world a better place, but also to lead people to Jesus, because ultimately, that's kind of the end goal, right? Is heaven. For me, it is. And so I just want to kind of, through the way I live my life and the way I do my business, just lead people to him in whatever way that would be. But I also think that it's kind of a delicate balance to, like, not make people feel like you're forcing that on them. So just to truly be authentic in who I am and what I believe, and not be afraid to share that. And then again, also to encourage and inspire others to do the same, is kind of what I have discovered is my mission. And I love what I do as far as the products that I sell and the healthy living journey. But I found that it's really just a vehicle for me to connect with people, to build relationships, and then to share, and to have conversations. I also just was finding, like, in the last couple of years, that I was having a lot of like really good conversations with people. I'm not much of a small talker. I kind of like to dive in and get to know people's stories. I actually am super passionate about how your story and my story and whoever's story can impact somebody. And by sharing that, like, that's how you can make a difference. And so I was having these conversations with people, and I'm like, this is like such good stuff. Like, more people need to have these conversations. So instead of being afraid to share some of those things, I've just tried to use the opportunities that God has given me to be a voice and share authentically, and to also pull other people into the conversation so that they can share as well. Because I really do think that God created us for a community, to learn from each other, to support each other. And so just to try to create that space for people in whatever capacity that might be.
It's really difficult, I think, in today's age to be able to have the confidence to be able to first have your identity in Christ, and then two, to be able to say, okay, I want to work this into my business. I want to work this into other relationships, because you see all of these stories that are going around about how, you can be, mocked and condemned and made fun of for your faith and all of that. And so, like you said, you want to be true to who your identity is and who God made you to be. And yet there's this constant internal struggle that we have as believers in how much do we reveal? Because on one side you say, I don't want to like reveal too much and risk losing a possible friend, and not just because we don't want to lose friends, but because maybe you're slowly witnessing to that person and revealing. But then you have the other side of it where people are like, no, I'm just going to hammer them over the head with Bible verse and Bible verse and Bible verse. And that can cause division. And that's actually not loving. And so
Right.
Where are you seeing a lot of your conversations starting around? Like, what's kind of that pivot point in the conversation where you're saying, hey, this might be an opportunity that this person's looking for something a little bit deeper that I could speak some truth into?
Right. I think you're so right. Like, I think there is so much division in so many areas of life. And I've always said, like, you're not going to get someone to see your point of view by, being super forceful and, kind of a know-it-all kind of thing like that. Like, you have to meet people where they're at, and that can be really tricky. But I try to just feel it out, and it really depends on the person. So usually, especially in one-on-one conversations, you just kind of feel like it's leading you that way, and I kind of try to say, like, okay, God, is this an opportunity? Is this what you're thinking? And sometimes I think you just have to acknowledge, like, okay, this is really awkward for me to like say, but have you ever thought about, or like, how do you feel about faith? Where are you at in your faith journey? And I think the more you get to know people, and as you develop those friendships and relationships, like, some people, right away, like, we can have this conversation.
Right.
Right. But those are usually kind of easier conversations because, maybe those people have a relationship with God or did in the past, and you can kind of open the door. And in other situations, you just kind of have to feel it out, but just little seeds of like, I just really encourage you to think about this, or even just saying, like, I'll pray about it for you if you're, and I hope that you're fine with that. And that usually, like, just to let people know, like, I care about you enough to share this, to pray for you. And I really love you as a person, and I want what's best for you. And so I think when people can see that your motives are true and authentic, and that you're being vulnerable, they can appreciate that. Maybe they're not at the same place as you, but I just think when you come from a place of being totally honest, and people can see that, that is kind of when I know I can open the door. Like I said, I kind of am bad at small talk. So when you get into a conversation and people open up and share with you, then I feel like, okay, if they're willing to share and be vulnerable, then I can too.
And I think too, one of the things that we might see as a missed opportunity is you talk about what you care about. And so if you're professing faith in Jesus and your faith isn't coming up in your conversations, I mean, that should cause you some concern or at least some pause to say, am I resisting the Spirit to speak into someone's life about what I'm feeling or what I believe? And so I think that's a great point that you make too. And one of the things that I was talking about earlier in the show is, how do we live this out as parents? In today's age, where our kids are being just inundated with information and so many things happening, and our initial reaction is just to like cocoon them, but knowing that that's not ultimately going to be the best thing for them. How do we begin to model our Christian faith, or how are you, trying as a mom, trying to model what that faith looks like functionally, not just, oh, well, I believe in Jesus, I'm a Christian. What does that look like on a daily basis?
Right. And I think that is so hard because when your kids are little, you do shield them so much. And then you kind of get to this point where you're like, okay, I can't protect them from the real world forever. So we have to have these conversations. And so I don't know. I just try to find those moments where like I can say, even just as simple as when I've messed up and saying to them, like, listen, you guys, like, I need to ask you for forgiveness because I messed up. I shouldn't have done this and I'm sorry. And I think modeling forgiveness for them or having those conversations in the context of, instead of just saying, especially because like as a mom, I can go like mama bear real fast, like protect my kids, someone's going to hurt them. And I think sometimes we have to take a step back and say like, I know that person hurt you and that it can be really hard. But first of all, you should have a conversation with them and like tell them how that made you feel. But also, we need to look at it from their perspective and maybe what they're going through. And I think just showing your kids that that everyone's going through something and that like Jesus called us to love people and that sometimes that's hard. But that's what we are called to do. And we have to show them that and how to also, it's tricky because you don't want your kids to keep getting hurt, right? Or put themselves in situations. So you want to encourage them to be confident too, but also it's finding that balance of like loving people and sharing with them honestly. And also being strong in what you believe in the person that you are. And so I honestly feel like one of the best things I can do for my kids is just be open with them sometimes about conversations that I've had with people that are hard or situations I've been through, or in experiences with them where I'm like, that was hard. And here's the thing. And like, I have a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old, but especially with my 14-year-old, I'm really trying to have more conversations where I'm like, listen, I'm telling you this, and like build up that trust with her so that she looks to me as kind of like a role model and that we can have like honest conversations and say like, like this happened and, that's wrong, right? Or this is what we believe kind of thing. And so really just finding those moments instead of like, just trying to like not have them be exposed to it, like talk through it with them so that they're not learning about it from other people that and maybe a different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I was talking earlier, and it's so interesting that you brought that up, about having these conversations with our kids and revealing to them some of the things that we're struggling with. And one of the things that I'm finding with my boys is, obviously, and I remember being this way, as a kid, they're so narrow focused or they're so focused on the small here and now. And, as you get into those teenage years, as I'm sure you're experiencing with your kids too, that begins to widen. And it's still very self-focused, but it begins to widen. You're like, oh, so there's there's a whole lot out there that I'm not aware of. And yet, as we're trying to parent, we want to think big too. We want our kids to come to faith in Jesus. We want them to confess him, as their savior. And that's a huge task. That's a huge desire for us. And it's kind of out of our control too, but we can influence. And one of the things that I was talking about was, in order to have those eternal ramifications, those really big effects, we have to do small little things. And so we need to begin to position ourselves and even our family unit in situations where we can say, we're gathering with this other family, we're gathering with these people from our church or from other churches. And so have you found kind of a way, or just a way that you can begin to position your family around other families so that it's not like, oh, well, my mom and dad are a bunch of weirdos because they think this stuff. But no, it's actually, there's a lot of us that are trying to go that way.
Right. Well, actually, I don't know if we talked about this earlier, and maybe this is off topic, but so I grew up and I went to small public school, but my kids actually are in a very small private school with our church. So they're around a lot of other kids and families. They talk about Jesus every single day, which I don't think is really unusual for kids to go to a private Christian school, right? But what's different is my daughter is going to be a freshman next year in high school, and she could go to a small school here that's a couple about 20 miles down the road. She could go to the high school that we have here in town, but we're actually sending her to a dorm school about an hour and a half away from home, and she won't be home all week. I feel like a lot of people think we are weirdos for that, because like, you're sending her away, like, what are you doing? And it is totally weird. I tell people, like, I've had the last 18 years to adjust to the idea since I met my husband, because he did that as well. And so, but actually everyone in my daughter's class, which is just kind of unique, there's only 3 other kids, but all 4 of them are all going. And so they have this group that's going. And I just feel like people are like, how can you do that? And I just feel like it's not for everyone, and I'm not saying that it is, but we just feel like as much exposure and as many people as we can have them be around that love Jesus and are going to kind of bring that perspective to the way they see the world, because there are so many things out there that they are going to be influenced by. And so the more they can have those influences, we just feel like that's really important, because ultimately, our goal is for our kids to be in heaven one day. And so, again, not for everyone. And I never thought I would be doing it with my daughter, but it is the path we're choosing. So I feel like they're surrounded by a lot of other people who believe the same thing as them. And I think that's helped them become confident in their faith. Like, honestly, I feel like my kids sometimes teach me so much because of the things that they learn about. And I'm like, wow, like, you know what I mean? So yeah. We just have a very open dialogue, I think, about our beliefs and why it's important, and how you can play that out in everyday life. And also, I just think too, like, my kids have seen me in my business be open about my faith, especially when talking with my team. I will share experiences that we've gone through or things that we've gone through. And I will tell my team, like, I ask God, like, okay, what am I supposed to do? And he shows me. And I'm, like you said, it's part of the conversation. If I wasn't sharing that, I wouldn't be true to who I am and how I run my business. And I always tell people, like, I don't know what your situation is and what you believe, but this is how I run my life. And I've had times where my faith has been not as strong, or it's been tested, and I share those things openly, because I think people sometimes have this idea of, like, you have faith and everything's perfect and everything's all great and you love Jesus and nothing bad ever happens to you, and you're never mad at God and you never question things. And I'm just like, that's not necessarily true either. So I just try to show those things to my kids, but also in all areas of my life, and to show that I'm not perfect, because nobody is.
Right. And I think too that, one of the beauties of our faith is that it's not reliant on us. I mean, the fact is, like, we don't want people to come to faith in Jesus because they admire us. I mean, we want to be, like you had said about your business, we're the vehicle, to
Right.
point them to Jesus and to be able to say, this is the impact that Christ has had in my life. This is what he has redeemed me of. This is what he has freed me of. I still struggle every single day, but the hope that I have is what brings me peace. It's what brings me joy. And and we don't live for this world. Like, we're sojourners here. And with my kids, they are very much into the here and now. And so, how would you say, how do we get them to realize that this life is short, and there's so much more to be had, not just in this, in what they can do here, but just in Christ, that it's so much bigger than what we make it out to be.
Right. I don't know. That is really hard, because I don't know how old your boys are. I want to say maybe about, I have a 9-year-old boy, and I feel like it is a bit harder with him because he's so into what he's into right now at this moment, and he gets his mind set on something, and it's usually like something he wants to do or something he wants to go buy.
Yep.
And I'm like, buddy, you got to see like the bigger picture of like, this isn't the most important thing. And this isn't, and I think sometimes just like putting that in context for him, which sounds so weird, like, you want to go do this, but like, not necessarily saying like you're making this an idol, but being like, is this really as important as you're making it out to be? If you haven't made time to like, if you don't think it's that we should go to church, why do you think we
Right.
should go do this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just like those small, like you said, it's the small things in the everyday, and just like making sure you tell them like, why is it important to, pray and have a conversation with God? Why is it important to go to church? All those things, because they are so focused on just like what's in front of them and their immediate, like what they want. And it's so hard for them to see the big picture of everything else.
It doesn't help that culture has, ingrained in them that instant gratification, or the need for instant gratification. And that's something that we constantly are struggling with, in modeling as well, because we can fall victim to that.
Yes.
just as easily.
Yes.
I'm here talking with Trista Dunsmoor, and I hope you're enjoying the conversation like I am, but I want to talk about a new project that she's relaunching, really. And so it is her new podcast, Unwritten, Your Authentic Story. And so, by the time that this episode comes out, she's working to get some episodes out for you to listen to. So definitely check out on Google, on Apple, on Spotify, Unwritten, Your Authentic Story with Trista Dunsmoor. So definitely check that out. Again, that is Unwritten, Your Authentic Story. And so to piggyback off of that, Trista, what is the premise of this podcast?
So it's a little bit what I mentioned before, and just I had felt kind of this calling to start a podcast. And actually, my husband was like, "What are you going to talk about?" And I was like, "Listen, I have plenty to talk about, okay?" And then I was like, "Wait, what do I have to talk about? I don't really know." But the funny thing is that what I found in my business is what I said. I'm very passionate about people sharing their story, and I just think when you share the things you've been through, because I think a lot of times it is so easy to look at somebody and think that their life is something, and you I don't know, people, even the most successful, well put together people, which is not me, but like they've gone through struggles and they've been through things. And so the whole premise of it is just having people share their stories, to have those conversations so that we can all learn from each other, and maybe just hear that little bit of encouragement or hope that you need for that day. Like if you're a mom who's going through something with their kids and you're like, you know what, it's going to be okay. Or if you're a business owner or whatever. So the whole premise is just to have those conversations and hear people's story, because I think sharing and being honest and open creates community and can be so valuable for people.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that having more voices talking about their story and what it is that makes them who they are. And again, I mean, we're striving to be who God made us to be. And in each and every part of that story, God had a hand in. There's nothing outside of his reach. And so being able to look at, what is happening in our life story and being able just to talk about that and share that, it can definitely be a blessing and encouragement to so many people. And so I want to move into this thought of, we are seeing for a lot of people a struggle with church, and not just our kids, saying, why do we need to go to church? But there are family, there's friends, there are, coworkers who, they profess faith and they say, yes, I'm a Christian, but they're struggling to get connected in with a church. Maybe they're trying to do the Lone Ranger kind of situation where, they're their own little autonomous church within their family. And for a lot of people, I know that there's good reason. The church isn't perfect.
No.
People, when the church is run by individuals, there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be hurting. And so for a lot of people, the hurt, the concerns, the reasons for not wanting to plug in are real. And I think that the worst thing that the church, small C church, and the leaders within that church can do is to write them off and say, oh, well, we can't help them. What do you think is one of the biggest items that is pushing people away from wanting to join or be part of a church?
I just think that part of it is there's just so much hurt, I think, that people have. And they've maybe come from a background where there was just a lot of like rules that they felt were arbitrary and didn't make sense to them. And I think that there's a lot of times people don't fully understand, like things are taken out of context, like in so many areas of life. I feel like things are taken out of context, and then people kind of are like, well, if that's how that is, I don't want to be part of it, kind of thing. And I think just like looking at what the Bible actually says and knowing that that is God's word and that God loves you and that Jesus died for you, right? And so this is why it's like this. And I don't know, I just feel like there are so many people who have been hurt in the past, like you said, by people who have written them off. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is they come with like these past experiences and maybe not fully understanding how something was intended by someone. And like you said, I think also recognizing, I think especially for me, I've kind of recognized more recently, like the church is made up of people and we live in a sinful world. Right. So just like you said, it's not going to be perfect. And so having that expectation of like, even though you're a Christian and so-and-so's a Christian, like you're still probably there might be situations where you're hurt or people need forgiveness or something isn't perfect, but coming to it and knowing like this is a community of people who believe the same thing that I do. And their ultimate goal is, to help other people get to heaven. I think that, I would hope that people would see the value in that. And hopefully, for me, it's just going back to what does the Bible say and really focusing on that, because a lot of it can get muddied with things you see on social media or, right. Different people who say things that maybe aren't exactly what God intended.
Right. And one of those battles, is there are individuals and they have grown quite successful on platforms that take the Bible out of context and they run with a verse or they run with an idea that you see in scripture and they say, see, it says it right here. And it's like, well, read the context around it and you kind of, get away from that. But But I think it goes back to we want what we desire. And as we battle through sin each and every day, those desires of the flesh that we would say as Christians, of our old self, keep coming back. And this is why community, and why it's important to model for our kids and to have our kids in situations where they are learning from a young age accountability. Because I feel we have gotten into a rut as people where we say, I don't need to be held accountable because my truth is my truth. And if I want to interpret it this way, then I'm going to live it this way. And who are you to tell me I can't? And I think that to an extent, we've kind of gotten okay with that. And we're like, okay, well, I'll let your truth be your truth. But I think at the end of the day, what Christians have to rely on is it's not our truth. It's God's truth. Like, we're not saying it because we came up with it. We're saying it because that's what God's word says. And for most of us, and I'm not going to say I'm perfect in this, but for individuals that we've talked to, we've had to have really hard conversations, but we're trying to have them out of love, not condemnation. You know, we want to see you reconciled.
Right, for sure. And I think that's what's so hard, because you see so many messages, like you've said, like of, well, you know, do what makes you happy and that kind of thing. And it's like, no, like Jesus like said, like, it's not always going to be easy, and there will be trials and there will be temptations, and like, this might be hard. And so you can't always do just what makes you happy, because that's not what Jesus calls us to do either. But there will be a time where everything will be made perfect. But yeah, like you said, those conversations are really hard to have, because what people see every day doesn't always, like, really hard. Like, you might see a cute quote at a store or on a notebook or something, and you're like, oh, but I really try to think, like, is this really, like, is it more like we need to look beyond the superficial meaning and say, like, does this align with truly what I believe?
Yeah. And I mean, that is, and I keep coming back to it, and it's just, who are you surrounding yourself with? And are they people that want to see you follow Jesus well? And that's our hope for anyone who's listening to this, is that we can come together and follow Jesus well. Right. Trista, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun, and look forward to hearing more of your podcasts.
Appreciate it. That is Trista Dunsmoor. You can find her podcast on Google, Apple, or Spotify. Just search for Unwritten, Your Authentic Story. And again, that's Trista Dunsmoor. You can become a local here at loveLocalPA.com. Just go to loveLocalPA.com/join, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook. That's all the time we have. See you next time.